Hi, I am Patricia Marlene Gregory Freeman. This is my JSU Capstone presentation called Improving Vocabulary and Language at Boaz Intermediate School. Let's start with the problem, purpose, and rationale. At Boaz Intermediate School, we strive to show academic achievement with all students. However, our historical data has shown that we are not getting the gains we would like to see with vocabulary development for all of our students. And with our English language learners, we would like to see more English acquisition. In Alabama in the year 1997, we had around 4,000 students enrolled in public schools that were Hispanic students. In 2018, that number had risen to over 61,000. This is written by T.P. Crane in Alabama.com in the year 2018. When a native English American student starts kindergarten, he will know around 5,000 words. A Hispanic student with English not as their first language that starts kindergarten will know around 5,000 words in his home language. So you can see the gaps in language are very large. We have the information about the kindergarten students comes from Colorado, Colorado in the year 2015. We have a large Hispanic population at Boaz Intermediate School. We also have large demographics with poverty. According to Miriam Springer in her book, What Does the Researcher Say About Vocabulary? In 2013, students from low-income families are part of the at-risk population who have heard fewer words and may have brains that are not cognitively efficient for some of the work ahead of them in school and in life. However, she goes on to say, and we all know, that the brain has the ability to change. At Boaz Intermediate School, we have had many professional developments, professional learning communities, speakers, book studies about how poverty affects learning and about how to best help our Hispanic population. And we show perseverance in continuing our research and trying best strategies because, of course, we want all of our students to have a brighter future. The rationale for Boaz Intermediate School and schools with similar demographics is that, as shown on the previous slide, the research and connections in literature match what we saw with our historical data at Boaz Intermediate School. The problem with vocabulary and language with those subgroups that this research is the focus of. All schools would benefit from a task force that works on problems such as these and come up with solutions that they propose and then try to implement, and to continue to meet and evaluate the data. This was a demographics chart made by Ms. Christy Hopper in 2020 and updated recently. This shows our free and reduced luncheon. As you can see, we have a high poverty rate since we've had over 70% since 2015. This table shows our demographics by race, and while we have a majority with the white race, you can see how the Hispanic population has grown throughout the years. It's a little lower this year than last year, but those numbers tend to fluctuate. With the black race, we have 6% or less throughout this time period. Asian Pacific Islander, 2% or less, and other races, 3% or less during the time shown on this table. With English as a second language, we have English language learners that get a language acquisition class from an ELL teacher. And to qualify for that, it's based on your WIDA access scores. And as you can see, since 2015, again, those numbers have continued to rise. We have 68 in that program this year, and 3 of them are in their first year of English. We have 5 that are monitored or have completed the ELL program, and we have 67 that English is not the first language spoken at home. And while we encourage students to celebrate their culture and to keep that first language going and knowing it, we know that they're getting that gaps in English acquisition during summers, Christmas breaks, the COVID break. So we have to continue to strive to help them. The next couple of tables is by Don Daly, written in an article in 2020, and it shows all Alabama schools, and it shows all proficiency of reading between 2014 and 2019, and I have provided the subgroup of Hispanic students for those years. And our proficiency on high stakes tests for reading was 31% or less during 2014 to 2019. Our proficiency with our poverty subgroup, and it didn't quite go to 2019 for some reason on this table, was 38% or less between 2013 and 2017. The impact on stakeholders is my next section. This table information is also provided in my appendices, but I wanted to point out that we have Christmas Coalition due to our poverty demographics. Good businesses help out in the community. We also have Blessings in a Backpack, which provides food weekly that goes home with students. I also wanted to point out we have parent nights for our ELL students, but 72% met their WIDA access growth, and that's a 0.5 growth from the previous year. And while we celebrate that growth, we want to do even more, and that's one of the reasons for this research. And you see that Boaz says it's the city of possibilities, and we have since 2015 and before had that growth in the Hispanic population. And I want to say that all of the community, all the stakeholders, the teachers, our work we've done, we have embraced the Hispanic community that is part of Boaz now, and we are stronger for it. Task force members and meetings. We have Jennifer Cox, Amanda Duckett, myself, Marty Hatley, Christy Hopper, Jeannie Prince, and Harolyn Roberts. Parent, who is also a Boaz Elementary teacher and has a 5th grade student at Boaz Intermediate, Alicia Smith. And I have 2 students that are unnamed and not shown that are on my task force. They're 5th grade students. The timeline of initial meetings. On May 27th, 2021, I met with the principal and instructional partner to discuss and approve this research. On June 7th, I had a Zoom meeting with part of the task force to discuss some data that had to do with reading and ELL students, Tier 2 and Tier 3 students, and we discussed a solution could be iReady parent reports, because these reports take each component of reading, and the parents will know if their students are below grade level in that component, and it also gives them suggestions of what they can do to help at home. So it also comes in several different languages. On July 1st, I met with the entire task force minus the parent, and we discussed implementing proposed solutions and strategies for improvements. On July 20th, I went to summer school at Boaz Intermediate School and talked to my 2 student stakeholders and asked for their input on some of the proposed solutions the task force had come up with. And then on July 22nd, since parent Alicia Smith could not be at the July 1st meeting, I talked with her. She was on board with the strategies, and she really liked the elevation use that we talked about, because she had had that training as a Boaz Elementary teacher. The decision process, possible limitations, and proposed solutions are next. We had visual vocabulary, which is a program designed by me, and the limitation we thought might be student response, since it is new. We decided that we're at the level in our 3rd year of Sunday Upper Elementary phonics program that it really pulls out roots and affixes now that our kids have gone to the next level, and that would help with vocabulary. Elevation is a program we got last May. It's targeted for ELL students, but it can help all students. The only limitation we saw was the time to research it, because there's so much information available. And also, ELL students need discourse, they need peer conversations, and the health restrictions, we didn't know how the year would start with COVID. So that can stop discourse from being like you would like for it to be. Ready Reading has a wonderful vocabulary and comprehension component, and it provides discourse suggestions. Again, health restrictions could get in the way when the new year started. And then the iReady Reading Parent Report, we pretty much decided to go ahead and send, and we didn't see any limitations with sending that. Criteria for measurement. Other than our high stakes test, I showed you some data, and the high stakes test has been changing through the years with so many different formats. We can use already our historical data, however, from those high stakes tests show that vocabulary is a low component. Our already, we've in our third year has historical data per student. So as a fifth grade teacher, my colleagues and I can go back and look at third grade scores of every student for every diagnostic test. And this helps with knowing if they've improved throughout that time, if they're flatlining. I want to point out that this is not formatted correctly, but this is in Google Slides, and I'm making this video for the last assignment listed on Canvas. However, I have already been graded by the professors during our capstone presentations earlier in November. Already also, we give the diagnostic test, and we have growth monitoring, which some people call progress monitoring. The visual vocabulary was the program I mentioned, designed by me. We use the pre-test, post-test strategy, and we're including a quarterly test so we can get more data on if that program is helping the students. Stakeholder feedback. The teachers involved in the task force and other teachers using some of the strategies had excitement to have some new strategies to help with vocabulary and language. We had determination to try to get peer conversation and discourse in, even though unfortunately we did start the year with masks and social distancing and desk apart. We had the hope that those mandates would go away, and the mask mandate for now has gone away, and we are doing more group work, so that hope played out. Solutions, we decided to implement the proposed solutions mentioned earlier: visual vocabulary, the Sunday upper elementary phonics with roots and affixes, ready reading, heavy on the discourse for our ELL students, elevation strategies that targets ELL students. I'll demonstrate more in a few minutes. It helps all students. Already reading, all the components I told you we would use with that for vocabulary growth and ELL language acquisition growth. The implementation timeline was August 17th through 18th, the already reading diagnostic. August 20th through 27th was the pretest and first week of visible vocabulary. On August 23rd through the 30th, school-wide, 4th and 5th grade language arts teachers gave the same lesson for context clues to get those kids digging into those vocabulary strategies. On September 27th through the 30th, we had meetings about elevation and decided to research some strategies to share during our professional learning communities, because there are so many strategies available, and talk about what worked with our students and in our classroom. On October 4th through 8th, we gave the iReady first growth monitoring test and the visible vocabulary quarterly test 1. Here's a quick demonstration of visible vocabulary. They get images to know what the middle word means. They get sentences with context clues to know what the middle word means. And they say to themselves from the pictures and the context clues and sentences, can I tell what that word means? Then they unveil the meaning. Then in their journal, they write the definition here that's here, and they write their own sentence about the vocabulary word. There's so much that could be said about elevation, but I'll keep it brief. As you can see right here, this is a graphic organizer. Elevation will give you a student list of just your ELL students and how they scored on the WIDA Access test. Monitoring provides places of what you're doing, your accommodations, your WIDA Access can-do descriptors, what you're using. Instruction is the one that has so many strategies. This one was called word analysis. I'm sorry, it was called Don't Mention It, and it gives you a graphic organizer, but that you can use. And there's a video. This clips from the video, this screenshot, and it will show you how to use the strategy. There's a how-to for the strategy, and this is the wonderful part. I've hidden my students' names. I had students that needed high support for this, so they give me accommodations of the strategy to use with those ELL students that need those high support accommodations. I had interviews with all my stakeholders. My students were really happy with visible vocabulary as well as the 3 language arts teachers. Also, Amanda Duckett thought it was great that because she used to teach 5th grade language arts that we were adding something for vocabulary. Marty Hatley really loves elevation and that we're using those strategies. And Christy Hopper and Harlan Roberts, principal and instructional partner, said that anytime we're collaborating to help our students, we're doing good things for our school. The data showed with visible vocabularies, pretest and quarter test, this is the range of scores from the first pretest, and as you can see, there's quite a few that did not score well. This white band shows the scores for the pretest. The quarter 1 test, see how the band narrows on the lower scores and gets thicker for the high scores. So we hope that band on the next quarterly test just keeps getting wider. With iReady growth monitoring, you have to have 2 before you can get data provided by iReady. You have to have 2 growth monitorings, but I compared their diagnostic to their first growth monitoring. We had 14 students that grew 10 to 53 points, 5 students that grew 2 to 9 points, and we had a few decline, and those that decline this much, we know they're not engaging themselves because there's no reason for that. So for those, there was only 2 that scored 43 to 63 points below their first diagnostic test. For those students, we know to get them motivated, to give them talks and engage them more so they can do what they're capable of. Adjustments. We're giving the mid-year diagnostic November 30th through December 1st. We're having visual vocabulary, a second quarterly test again in November, and then we'll meet again in January to discuss changes if necessary. I thank you for your time. My appendices and references are available on the PowerPoint and at the end of the video. Actually, I'm ending it here because, again, this is to put in the Canvas, but you've already seen my official